but I'd like to start with Congressman Cramer. Is man-made global warming a reality? Why or why not? And what should we do about it?
Clearly, the climate is changing. The climate has changed for thousands of years, millions of years, perhaps. What role does man play in that? I think it's pretty clear that over the cycle of time, we don't know enough about the history of the world to be sure whose fault it is. I don't know this, though. The country and the world wants us to solve this issue. They want us to deal with greenhouse gas emissions, and I think we ought to. And I think you're going to find you're going to find very little daylight between Senator Heitkamp and me on this. We have some of the greatest innovators in the world in energy policy right here in North Dakota. This is why, another area where President Trump and I disagreed, I'm so sorry, Mr. President, but I did not support him getting out of the Paris Accord. I stood with Ivanka and Jared Kushner and with Rex Tillerson, and I was very public in my support for staying in Paris and helping to solve the problem, not by eliminating fossil fuels, but by working through innovation and technology to create solutions that allow us to include these very precious resources that we have right here in North Dakota and throughout the United States.
You know, and Kevin, I want to applaud you for that. I think you and I both took the same position that it's better to be in the deal than outside of the deal.
You had more friends than I did, though.
I did. I had more friends who agree. Yeah. No, and I remember when you said that, I thought that's exactly right. We can't do this alone, and we've got to recognize that we're going to live in a carbon-constrained world. And so I'm really proud because I think the single piece of climate legislation that actually got passed was a tax credit that I initiated called 45Q. Now, Kevin thinks that it only applies to one company in Houston. That's not true. In fact, one of the first users here may be an ethanol plant in Richardson. But what this does is it brings together people not to get into the climate debate, Dave, not to have this discussion because you aren't going to get agreement. I happen to think that climate is changing because we have a lot of people on this globe doing a lot of things that they haven't done in the past, and that is helping to change the climate. But we can solve this problem if we look at how we develop technologies. We literally, you guys, have machines that can pull CO2 out of the air. This is not fake. This is real, and there's real investment behind it. So we know in order to get our temperatures down, we absolutely need to do air capture of CO2. That's possible. It's possible when we innovate, as Kevin has said. But if you want to look at who actually got a piece of climate legislation done, I think that person's standing at this podium.
Congressman Cramer.
We have to be very careful to not kill the innovators before they come up with the solution, and we're on the brink. Senator Heitkamp's right. Section 45Q of the tax code provides a credit. The problem is that the definitions are not reconciled between the IRS and the DOE and the EPA, and our administration is currently working on doing exactly that so that it can be used by people who don't have that rather unique vertical integration of mineral rights and surface rights and pipelines and all those things. We need to do a lot more on it. I think we're all united on getting that done. But she also supported a president candidate who she said would be the greatest president in the history of the world or some crazy thing like that, who wanted to end it all. That was her champion. She was a champion for Hillary Clinton. And if we'd have had, can you imagine 4 years of Hillary Clinton? Thank God this president saved coal and oil.
Senator Heitkamp.
All I can say is that it's interesting because Kevin always mentions other provisions that he wants passed. I'm in a minority in my body, the Senate, but yet I was able to get this initiative passed. Congressman Cramer is in the majority. We have a majority in the Senate. And those provisions that he says need to be complementary that he's advancing, they didn't pass. You've got to look at results. You've got to look at people who actually get things done. And I'm very proud of what we've done with 45Q. It has opened up an incredible discussion across the country on how we're going to innovate to take care of our CO2 problem.
Our next issue, we start with Senator Heitkamp. Veterans issues have become a pretty important topic in this race. Can each of you offer some clarity on how you stand on the issue?
Well, I just did a two-day tour with Secretary Hagel talking about veterans issues. And, you know, I grew up in a town of 90 people. My dad started the VFW Club. We knew what it meant to honor the flag, and we knew what it meant to honor our veterans. I took a poster around in these events showing that every brother and my dad put on a uniform and served their country. Almost all of my mother's brothers served their country. That's who I am. It's in my DNA. And I don't think Kevin and I disagree on how we respect and revere veterans. We've been at many, many joint events, whether it's send-offs or whether it is our annual Veterans Day events. But it's not enough. It's not enough to just attend an event. It's not enough to just show up on Veterans Day or Memorial Day. You've got to walk the walk, which means getting a clinic into Grand Forks. It means a vet center in Grand Forks, which I've done. It's getting a CBOC in Devil's Lake. It's making sure we listen to veterans, and I hear over and over and over again, and honor them by getting the medals that they earned that they didn't receive. It is not just about the macro issues. It's them knowing every day that they have someone sitting in the Senate who believes in what they've done and respects what they've done and will fight for them as our first priority for legislation.
Congressman Cramer.
Well, I don't disagree with anything that Senator Heitkamp said, although it took all of us to get a lot of those things done, all of those things done for North Dakota, and at both a macro and a micro level. I'm very grateful, however, that we finally have a president who's with us on trying to provide more benefits for our veterans. He signed the VA Missions Act, which provides more clarity, streamlines the benefits, streamlines the infrastructure, as well as provides greater clarity for VA choice. It's refreshing to be able to go to the Rose Garden for a bill signing that helps our veterans, but it's also more than just the veterans. It's about our active military as well. I'm grateful that we were able to get a cost of living adjustment in permanent law. I'm grateful that we were able to get the largest pay raise for our military men and women that they've had than what they've had in the last 10 years, a real commitment from an administration that joins the unified Congress in providing those benefits. But there's no question, Senator Heitkamp and I have been at many events together. In fact, it's some of the most fun we ever had is at these events because we tend to yuck it up on the stage a little bit, you know. Yeah, we pick on Hoeven. Sorry, John, we pick on Hoeven a little bit. Anyway, it's some of the most fun we've had together.
No, I you know, and I just want to compliment Kevin. He was one of the founders of the honor flights, and anyone who has ever. And anyone who has ever been on an honor flight, anyone who has ever seen that, it's a special moment. It's a special moment when those World War II vets for the first time, or the Korean War vets for the first time, open up about their experience. And I'm proud of the work that I've done to honor our Vietnam vets. And this is something that should never be a partisan issue. We share equally our commitment to our veterans.
Congressman, anything further?
I'd just say it's not a partisan issue in North Dakota.
Okay, we've come down to about the end of the debate here, but I do have one other question. This is seen by a lot of people as going to be the most expensive political race in North Dakota history. Is there anything that Congress can do to kind of scale back on the money, to do better campaign disclosure or anything like that? I'll start with Congressman Cramer.
I'm glad you asked the question. The last part of the question, I think, is the answer. You talked about disclosure. And when we know that the Supreme Court has determined that contributions, donations are a form of expression. And certainly they are, right? We all want to give money to the candidate that supports our position, which is why Senator Heitkamp has received $12.5 million in the last 17 days from the pro-abortion crowd. I understand that. But that's okay. That's okay. But
we're down to 1 minute, so
okay.
I'll give her one more.
Shame on you.
Good. I didn't do it.
You know, the question is about how do we fix it. I didn't make these rules. In fact, I don't support them. Congressman Cramer does. Buckley versus Vallejo, which says speech is money. Congressman Cramer says over and over again that free speech means money. That can't be our rule of law. When I was your Attorney General, I fought against that. I fought against Citizens United. But when these are the rules of the game, this is what you do. And you don't unilaterally disarm. We can fix this, but we can only fix it as the Supreme Court reverses Buckley versus Vallejo and Citizens United, and we need a constitutional amendment, in my opinion.
Thank you, and I have to stop it there. We've run out of time. Thank you both for participating. Thank the North Dakota Broadcasters Association for sponsoring it. Remember to vote.